Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining our webinar today. We'll give people a few more minutes to trickle in. While we wait, Evie, how's your week been going? You're looking tan.
Thank you. It's been going good, just kind of ramping back up. I was in Portugal last week.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, how about
Very
you?
jealous.
Anything fun?
No, lots of sports watching,
Ooh,
World
yes.
Cup, so that's been
Gotta
fun.
love the World Cup.
Yeah. We have a good amount of attendance now, so maybe let's get into it. We can start with some intros. My name is Kelly. I'm a principal PM here at Regal. Helped build out a lot of the observability features that we're going to talk through today, and I'll pass it to you, Evie.
Awesome. Hi, I'm Evie. I'm a forward deployed engineer here at Regal. My role is basically to help you as the customer integrate your system with our product and everything that comes up along the way.
Yes, Evie's role is very critical here for our AI agent success. Today, we're going to go through a lot of our Convo Intelligence feature sets, as well as the new observability dashboard. The problem we're really trying to tackle here is to make sure we're not just building great AI agents, but having good ways to understand how they're performing at scale. I think most teams are very now are very outcome driven. They care about obviously the business metrics, but they also care about agent behaviors that are a little more subtle to uncover. So we'll talk through some of those, such as guardrail breach, hallucination, and robotic language. And I'm sure, Evie, you have a lot of great experience dealing with those issues.
Yeah, it's always so interesting because you go live and you have this agent, you spend a lot of time testing it and building it, but sometimes it's a little bit harder to find the intricacies that can go wrong, just because then you'd have to manually go through every transcript, and it's hard to see some of the patterns that emerge. But this observability dashboard helps bridge that gap.
Totally, yeah. So let's look into our platform real quick. Before we get started, I want to do kind of a quick overview of this part of our product. Here you're seeing on screen our conversation intelligence section of the features. Typically, recordings and transcript is where, Evie, I imagine you go pretty deep into looking at the individual transcripts. Exactly. If you want to observe truly how the agent's sounding, this is where you can even listen to the recording.
Yeah, I think it's a really important feature to just get very granular, but then you also need some of them overarching data as well.
Overarching data, totally. I do want to kind of call out this section here, custom AI analysis. My understanding is this is pretty critical as well.
Super important.
Could you speak to maybe how custom AI analysis is used?
Yeah, exactly. Custom AI analysis is custom AI analysis is super important because you need to be able to have certain data points that aren't necessarily generic across all types of customers. So there are certain ones like having no AI. It's people might request to not speak to an AI agent. That's one that we can kind of universally use. But then there are ones that are a little bit more specific, like did you book an appointment, or did you fund a mortgage, let's say, on the call? That sort of stuff you'd want to know, and you're able to use the custom AI analysis to be able to track that on a per call basis and then look at it in more of a data-driven way rather than when you're just trying to scan through a transcript and evaluate it yourself. The basic way it works is you set up a prompt that's just going to be sent to an LLM along with the transcript after each call to be able to, they run it on the entire transcript and then determine, there's a couple different options. Sometimes they're Boolean values, sometimes they're multi-select, sometimes it's just free text, like a summary of the call, that sort of stuff. But it's really crucial for us to be able to understand a little bit more about what's going on each call.
That's super helpful overview. Yeah, here you can see some examples of the previously set up ones. I think this is a good segue to talk about the observability dashboard, because what it sounds like to me is that custom AI analysis, as the name suggests, is the custom data points that FDEs might set up that are super specific to the brands. But during our learnings, I think we've also realized there are just a standard set of observability metrics we need that shouldn't be a burden to the FD or the brand to set up, and that's what this dashboard is essentially trying to target. Here, going a little bit into this dashboard, at the top, we have these standard metrics like call minutes. This is for my demo brand, so not a ton of minutes, but there's also latency for all these agents across multiple days. We can see contact interruption, agent interruption, how much of that is happening on the call. Action latency, I think this is important as a component of latency as well. And you can here see the individual actions across your agents that have caused like high latency. So you can like kind of dig deeper. And then lastly, action failures, which is super important to track because that can basically lead to incomplete tasks on the agent side. Any kind of like specific metrics here that you have recent learnings or examples to share?
This sort of data is just super important because you can make actionable decisions off of like changes you've made or anything like that. So for an example, I had a customer who was on a single state agent and the agent was like continuing to expand, like the use case was growing and growing. And so while it was working very well when we first launched, we were starting to see it not hit the same success metrics it had been hitting before. So we were like, where is this coming from? We were trying to deep dive into transcripts. And so we came to the observability dashboard and we noticed that the latency was continuing to go up because this prompt was becoming too long. And it was just slowing the entire process down. And from that, we were able to make the decision to switch to a multi-state agent for their use case. And that we could start seeing the latency go back down again, and all the success metrics were more evening out to back where they were before.
Awesome.
And so it was a great way to use the dashboard to actually make a decision and improve the improve the agent quickly.
Nice. Yeah, that's a great example, and glad to hear that we're able to use these metrics to improve agent. And sounds like this is definitely something that would be hard to catch using like custom AI analysis, just because this is almost like a performance level thing. That
it's like a system sort of behind the scenes.
Totally. And I think another common use case here that we hear people using this dashboard is kind of comparing model changes potentially. Could you speak to maybe some?
So the good thing about this dashboard is that like you can track any type of change you're making. So specifically, as you mentioned, a model change, you're able to see that if you went from model like a 4 series model to a 5 series model, it's very clear how that's affecting all these type of baseline metrics immediately. And then you can make a very informed decision about if you want to stick with maybe a more expensive model or go back to maybe a cheaper model that was performing better in the metrics that you care about.
Yeah, I wanted to show with that in mind this kind of second section in the dashboard. These are LLM issues for the agents. So unlike, just latency, like performance metric, these are your metrics that are evaluated by another LLM. So it's more on the subjective layer, things that are not like hard deterministic numbers-based metrics. So here we have, robotic language, repetition, guardrail breaches as examples, and also hallucination. We know these are pretty important to track, whether you're switching models or just in general deploying a new agent. You probably want a really good pulse on some of these issues.
Yeah. And I think this applies a lot to that model question you were asking earlier. Like even with the repetition rate, we had an example where we were using a 4 series model and it was continually saying goodbye more than once. And that was something that it was getting flagged by us during testing and obviously our customer as well during testing. But it's not necessarily something we can track with custom AI analysis. And so by using this dashboard, we were able to then switch to a higher model and see that repetition rate was going down.
That's super cool.
And make the decision that we should be using a 5 series model because it has a little bit more structure and guardrails around it.
What about guardrail breaches? Would you say that's pretty important for the types of customers we serve?
100%. Yeah. I think that there's a lot of examples where guardrails are extremely important, especially with HIPAA compliant customers. So in that case, they have to be able to verify that you are the person you're saying you are, whether that be with date of birth and name or other certain requirements. But by having these guardrail tracker in place, we're able to determine that we're actually following these rules because we can't afford to have any breaches of that. So we're able to make sure that that's all happening by using the guardrail breaches tracker.
Makes sense. As you can see, we have pretty specific cuts in these metrics that are focusing on different parts of the agent. Guardrail breach obviously focus on the guardrail. We have policy hallucination that focus a lot on the task steps and like the Q&A section of the agent. We have, tool hallucination as well as wrongful function calls. These are all kind of focusing around action failures, or if whether it's like misfired or if the agent kind of said the wrong thing about the action. So it's really kind of covering all parts of the agent config.
Yeah, and to add on to what you were saying, like bringing this back to the customers, these are all super important things that customers are asking questions about or are super worried about. In certain scenarios, they're worried that if these things go wrong, it could be very bad down the line. And so by making sure that we're able to track it and that this isn't just like one-off in this transcript it worked correctly or during testing it worked correctly, but consistently as we're making changes and expanding use cases, it's continuing to work correctly. I think it's very important and it's a great use for this dashboard.
Cool. Now that we have walked through this dashboard, looked at a good amount of these metrics, I'm curious, Evie, maybe we take a step back here to talk through, as you're building a net new AI agent, how are you thinking to incorporate these metrics into your day-to-day, and how does this kind of complement the existing performance metrics that we're already tracking for the agents?
Yeah.
Maybe at a high level.
I think, and we can kind of bring it back to the earlier when we were talking about latency. I think that one is really important while you're building an AI agent, because obviously the longer the prompt is, the longer it's going to take anything to be able to generate. So while you're building, kind of keeping this in mind, that you're trying to optimize for the most efficient agent that's able to answer questions as naturally as possible. And then once it's live, being able to then track that on this dashboard, I think is a very important balance. It is interesting because obviously during testing, some of that is also going to be able to appear on this dashboard. So you're able to kind of do your own gut check on what's going on. And making sure that while we're always using best practices, you're ensuring that something hasn't been adjusted on the back end that is changing the way that you should be building an agent from the beginning. And then continuing, as I said, to be able to iterate on that as these use cases expand and get more complex, because they will. So that's an important thing to keep in mind.
Makes sense. Sounds like latency, maybe even robotic language, repetition. Yeah. These are kind of a cluster of metrics that are super important for making sure your agents sound human.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not like humans will wait 5 seconds before responding. So,
100%.
These are important.
Yeah, and I think the other interesting one is the functions, just because, especially during the build process, there's a chance that the functions aren't necessarily set up correctly or anything like that. So if you're doing some type of testing, it's a good way to kind of, again, gut check, make sure that you are actually sending things to people's CRM, or you're actually posting to Regal or something like that. Anything that's happening, to be able to ensure that it's getting called at the right time in the right way and you're getting successful results is exactly what we need.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Why don't we actually take a look at Builder just to conceptualize or tie in to our product some of the concepts you're talking about, Evie. Here I have our demo agent Reggie that some of you may have talked to on the phone. Could you speak to when you're talking about actions, how are you using the builder, and generally how you're optimizing each of these sections within the builder to tie to those metrics we're discussing?
Yeah, I think we can start at the very top and say even when choosing a voice and choosing a model, that sort of thing, it all comes down to the metrics that you're going to see in that dashboard are going to be heavily affected by what you're doing there. So as I spoke about earlier, in the 4 series models versus the 5 series models, there can be some differences there, and that can also lead into how you're going to be prompting. But basically just making sure that all of these moving pieces are kind of fitting together in a way that is, as we've continued to talk about, optimizing those metrics, and that you're keeping everything in mind. And I think another good part of the observability dashboard is almost like a reminder of what is important. So you're not forgetting that you want it to sound real or something because obviously those sound very simple and straightforward, but when you're getting really into the weeds, it's a good way to just keep yourself on track and make sure that everything is kind of coming together to make a full, complete AI voice agent.
AI, totally. Yeah, I know the sort of initial phases of releasing features, we have focused more heavily on the performance aspect of agent. And here, I think by performance, what we really mean is like your business metrics. Is this AI agent transferring the calls that they should be, or for an inbound agent, are they containing the calls that they should be? My understanding is like we look at this kind of performance tab for a lot of that information on the individual AI agent side.
Yeah. I think a lot of the time we look at the performance tab and then also just the basic reporting dashboard for any type of like complex like business metrics and success metrics. But I think that it is interesting because you're right. Like most of the like latency stuff and all of that was not being really reflected on these types of dashboards as much.
Right.
And so by kind of splitting this out and making sure that we have more of a well-rounded view of the entirety of a well-rounded view of implementing an entire AI voice agent, I think is very important. And so, like, as you can see on this tab, like, it has a lot of details about It
doesn't have a lot of data. I'm sorry, this one I pulled up.
I'll cut that out.
Yeah.
As you can see, it has a lot of metrics about an agent that are not necessarily like super detailed, as in the function calls. We don't really get the insights that you get from the observability dashboard, and I think by adding that in as basically a supplement, we're now getting a full picture.
Totally, yeah. This is almost like a very top level check. It's like, are my basic business metrics working? But really to dig one level deeper to like actually problem solve, it's becoming insufficient.
Like you might see like a dip in one of your success metrics, like a higher transfer rate or lower containment rate or something like that, but you don't necessarily have the insights into that without adding in both custom analysis and the observability dashboard, because you don't know what the cause is, you just know what the effect was.
Yeah, makes sense. So another thing I want to touch on as sort of where the product is going is we will be incorporating the observability dashboard, all these great metrics we're talking about that's important for AI agent performance, incorporating these into Copilot, which is our AI built AI feature set. The kind of like goal and impact there is really trying to simplify the interpretation. Evie, you're obviously an expert in this area, but not every person, if they just want to stand up their own AI agent, can easily understand, how can I impact latency if the function call is erroring now? Like, what do I even do to go update that in my agent? So trying to democratize that process and that knowledge as much as possible. So we will be very soon, as I mentioned, like putting like all of this data into Copilot, so you can like directly there ask these questions, like why is my latency spiking for this AI agent? Why is a hallucination rate or guardrail breach going up? Evie, maybe can you speak about how that would help your workflow as well? Because I know maybe now you already use like other tools such as Claude or like Codex to do this kind of task. Like how would it improve your workflow if it's like kind of incorporated into Copilot?
I think it'd be like, it is a huge improvement. Like honestly, I feel like the basic thing of how we know this information now is that we have to do bulk downloads of transcripts. We have to put it all in Claude. We either have to manually go through and do all of this like manipulation to make sure that we're getting answers like this. By incorporating this into Copilot and just into the full Regal platform, it allows us to get answers so much quicker and also somewhat takes out the middleman. Like there are scenarios where you as a customer could come in and ask those same sort of questions and get to the same sort of answers that it would take an FTE to get a long time to get to very quickly now when we have all this data at our fingertips. So I think that like by implementing it into Copilot, we are opening a lot of doors to make the iteration and growth and scaling process just that much quicker.
Yeah, totally. That's definitely the main goal that we want to achieve, to make sure the iteration, like time to a really high quality agent, really reduce that via Copilot.
What's the product team thinking about when they're building these sort of new features?
Yeah, totally. That's a good question. I think, using observability dashboard as an example, since we're focusing on it today, a lot of the kind of principles behind this was around monitoring decisions and transparency. We wanted to make sure, as you even mentioned, there were a lot of challenges during building AI agents. So we want to give you the power and the tools for monitoring your monitoring needs, essentially. And that ultimately helps with making decisions because not everybody has that intuition or knowledge around like exactly what to change and what to do. So giving more insights will help you kind of like almost pinpoint to where you need to make changes and making that kind of decisions. And ultimately, like if you are making changes on the agent on behalf of customers, we want to also make sure customers can track different kind of trends and performance over time. Even something like model change is a very complex action. And that just really highlights the kind of set it and forget it doesn't work for building AI agent. We need a way to almost just like have a pulse check on all of these aspects. So really trying to focus on like, giving the transparency to both you and the customers so we can all have peace of mind. So yeah, I would say that's kind of what was motivating for us. And looking forward, as I mentioned, we're definitely trying to integrate as much of this into our existing platforms, whether it's Copilot or the kind of AI agent performance tracking, trying to make sure all that workflow start to become more simplified, but still have all the power and knowledge behind the scenes, so it's like easier, but still sophisticated, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I feel like what you're saying is really just giving the customers the opportunity to be on the front lines, and understand exactly what's going on from the get-go, and just really jump in and have all the data that they need from the start.
Yeah.
Which I think is super important, and I'm glad to see it because, like, as an FD, obviously we spend a lot of time doing manual sampling and custom reporting and all this kind of stuff. And the more we can make this in your hands first without having to bring us in, I love it.
Yeah, that's great. Great to hear.
Cool. Okay, cool. Yeah, now let's get into some questions. I see we've already got a few in the chat. Before that, though, this recording will go out to everyone after the call. And if you want more, register for our customer conference, Regal Rise, in September.
Yes.
Do we have anyone exciting coming, Kelly? Do you know?
Yeah, I think we've got leaders from Task Us, Mutual of Omaha, which I know Evie is one of your customers, so super exciting. We have our own CEO, Alex Levin, talking about customer experience and where we're headed next. It's our very first customer conference, so I think we're all very excited.
Super exciting. Woo!
Cool. Let's get into some Q&A. We do have some questions coming in. Let's take a look at some of them. The first one here is, can you set up alerts when a metric crosses a threshold? That's a really good question. I can take this one because not yet. Currently, we don't have alerts capability, but it's something we're actively adding. One way, as I mentioned, is through Copilot, and part of our Q3 goal is to, within the Copilot kind of homepage experience, start alerting you metrics or kind of analysis you should really be paying attention to. So this will definitely be a key one we'll start surfacing soon. So personally excited for that.
Okay, next question. Can you tie these quality metrics to business outcomes like conversion? I think that's a nuanced question, but I think the simple answer is yes. As metrics like conversion are going up, I think these quality metrics are also going to be going up because they go a little bit hand in hand. I do think that you can use the quality metrics to determine if that business outcomes are going to start going down. Like if you start seeing a drop in human conversations, or in the latency starts going up, that sort of stuff, that is most likely going to end in a business outcome also going down because your customers may get frustrated. So by using those quality metrics with those business outcomes, you're able to predict ahead of it happening and prevent issues. But I do think that they are going to kind of go in tandem at the same time.
That's interesting. They almost sort of, the business metrics you're suggesting is almost like lagging in some case.
I would imagine that would be sort of the thing. Like if you're seeing a significant decrease in conversions, that's going to happen after things have been going wrong for a bit of time.
Yeah.
It's not just going to be immediately you're going to see a drop in business outcomes.
So yeah, even more important to kind of keep an early pulse check, I think, in these quality metrics. Next question here. How long does setup take on an existing deployment? I think, Evie, maybe you also can speak to that best.
So like a normal deployment looks like you have your kickoff call, you start gathering all the requirements, making sure that we know how to integrate with your CRM, that we know what your CCaaS platform is, all of that sort of stuff, and then we start getting you a V0 agent, some testing, all of that good stuff, all the way up until like when we're about to go live. And the good thing is that these metrics are going to be automatically turned on if the feature is on. Correct me if I'm wrong, Kelly.
Yes.
And you'll be able to, just from the get-go, be able to see all of this latency stuff, the function timeouts, anything like that, so that once we've tested and like perfected your whole system of the deployment, we're able to just go and make sure that we're monitoring immediately.
What are the other components that do require FDE's custom setup, maybe like the custom AI analysis?
Yeah, exactly. So some of the stuff that's not as generic between accounts, like as you mentioned, custom AI analysis, those are a little bit more FDE involved. That's where we help you guys determine what are the best like data points you might want to track. I think a good example is sometimes we do like a drop-off point. Like if you have a long conversation, you want to know exactly when calls are maybe ending not as the way you'd expect them to. And so that sort of stuff would be tracked within the reporting dashboard off of the custom AI analysis. And so we help you with that sort of stuff and handhold along the way. But the good thing is the observability dashboard, you don't need us for. That's just automatically
That's
there.
On, yeah.
We can help you interpret it, but it's always there.
Last question, maybe kind of similar in flavor there. Is this something our team has to run ourselves or someone on your side helping us work through it? I think definitely like a combination of both, like you said, like parts of it will be set up, ready to go for you to interpret from day one, but the FTEs will still be kind of like helping, guiding them through. Yeah.
And I think like two things with this is like one, some of these terms are a little bit more technical. So like even when you talk about latency, that's not something that everyone just automatically understands.
Yeah.
So that's where we come in to help you understand what that means for your AI agent and eventually your business outcomes. And then also, I think that kind of also ties into Copilot of like, we're here to help you, but you also have this great tool at your disposal that's also able to put it in more of layman's terms. So you understand what's going on without necessarily needing us to walk you through it every time.
Perfect. That's all the questions we have today. Thank you all for coming and joining our webinar. Hope you were able to learn more about our product. Yeah, thank you, Evie.